Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Hayward City Council meeting, February 28, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, can you call the roll?
I'll be happy to do that after the pledge.
Before we call the roll, I would like to call upon Councilmember Goldstein to please lead the pledge. Thank you, Councilmember Goldstein. Madam City Clerk, can you now call the roll?
Thank you very much. Good evening. Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Present.
Councilmember Marquez.
Present.
Councilmember Roach.
Present.
Councilmember Syrup.
Present.
Councilmember Cermeño.
See.
Mayor Salinas.
Present, thank you. And I'd like to now call upon the City Attorney's Office to give a closed session announcement, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This evening, the council met in closed session at 5:30 pursuant to posted notice in the Brown Act. All members were present, no public comments. The council discussed the following item, personnel matter. The council continued its annual performance evaluation of the city clerk, consistent with its practice of annually evaluating its council-appointed officers, the city clerk, city manager, and city attorney. No reportable action was taken. Item number 2 was a property transaction discussion. The council discussed the master property lease with the Hayward Area Recreation District. No reportable action was taken. Closed session adjourned at 6:32.
Thank you, Mr. Vigilia. I'd like to now move on to public comments. This is reserved for anybody in the public that'd like to make a comment that is something that is not on the agenda or on the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to make a public comment?
Mayor Salinas.
Do we have anyone online?
Yes. Yes, we do.
I'd like to call TJ from Hayward Concerned Citizens.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure my Wi-Fi is not very good tonight. Hi, good evening, Council. I'm TJ with HCC. Last week, I called into the February 21st meeting, and I pulled consent item number 9 to share some concerns about the Bax St. Regis Multi-Service Campus project. I had mentioned that a couple of our group members also voiced concerns in the December 6th meeting about this project, and that these concerns were not captured in the minutes from that meeting. I wanted to retract that statement, as it was brought to my attention later that their comments were appropriately noted in the December 6th meeting minutes. I regret the error, and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'd like to see if there's any other public comments. Yeah, go ahead and turn on the mic and then state your name and turn on the button in the front. Okay, that's it. And state your name and go ahead with your comment. You got 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Vladimir Valorezo. I'm a Peruvian guy. I'm owner of El Causa. It's a food truck. It's the only Peruvian food truck in the area. I'm original from Castro Valley, living in Castro Valley since 1999. So since the pandemic, we opened a new business. It's a Peruvian truck, and we've been located since 2022 in Hayward by the ranch. So what we get now is a notice to be vacant and be removed from the area. And my family and I is concerned about that because I have a family and we spend a lot of money to try to run a new business. Like I say, it's a Peruvian food truck and it's the only one in the area. So we brought people from different areas located in Tracy, Stockton, San Francisco, San Jose. And from the owner, from the ranch located, is telling us like we have to be out. And we kind of concerned because we spent all the money. And we don't have the money at this time to try to look for places. You know, we're trying looking for places, but it's a lot of money. So we have two options. It's like be out of the area and trying to look for a new work, or just trying to be like reconsider the statement and give like a little chance to make more money. So my concern is like, I don't know if you guys be able to reconsider the decision to be removed from the area, or like try to give an extra chance. We don't try to be permanent in the area, but we're trying to be like, give another chance to try to make, you know, a little more money and basically survive, because it's really hard at this time. And the money we invest is, again, a lot of money. So basically that's what we're trying to say to you guys, if you reconsider that statement and give like an extra chance, not to be permanent, but to try to get or give us more time, because we have only 20 days for now. You know, that's my concern.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Next speaker is Ralph Arias.
Before I start, this is the letter from the property owner. Oh, okay, thanks. Haven't been here for a while. First and foremost, congratulations, Mayor-elect Mark Salinas. It was big 12 years ago when we first ran against each other. Good times. So I'm here today on behalf of my colleagues and my family-owned business, which are all leasing spaces at the ranch. Recently, we were given a letter from the owner that was sent by the city of Hayward's planning, permit, zoning department. We were all given 30 days to vacate the property by March 20th. I am here to ask for a zoning amendment and ratification. The current zoning ordinance only allows up to a year for temporary use permitting. I feel that the zoning ordinance is out of date compared to other city ordinances. All of the trucks at the ranch are permitted trucks paying for their proper permits, while other illegal vendors just show up. In 2012, I ran for Hayward City Council, and one of the amendments that council changed was a moratorium on cannabis dispensaries. It was lifted, and companies like Garden and Eden and Cookies then opened up. We are asking for a ratification of this old ordinance and allow us small businesses owners to continue to operate. We are operating at a vacant site which is temporary until the owner, Enrique Chan, gives us the notice when he will start construction of the property. We are occupying a site which the homeland at one time ransacked and removed all the wiring from the inside. This site could become possibly, dangerous to our neighbors if not occupied. As we all know, there is a large homeless encampment on the train tracks. And BART tracks. The current ordinance states that we must either operate down the Mission Corridor far from downtown or in the industrial areas of Hayward. Cities like San Francisco, Mountain View, Lathrop allow food trucks to be in their downtowns and in high traffic areas. Some also permit overnight parking in designated areas like District 6 in San Francisco and Channel Street in San Francisco, and the food park in Lathrop on the 205 and 580 interchange. We are asking you to ratify the outdated zoning ordinance so we can continue to serve the community and also welcome other food trucks downtown. We must bring foot traffic back to downtown and also be competitive with our neighboring cities when it comes to attracting new businesses. I have a child about to enter college this fall, and it is detrimental for me to continue my business near my home so I may spend more quality time with my family. I believe in our city. I believe we are a progressive city, and I want Hayward to be business friendly. That is why I'm asking you to consider ratifying, amending the current zoning ordinance, and I thank you for your time. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to next call up Rusty Fox.
Good evening, I'm Rusty Fox. I've basically been the property manager for the ranch since the current property owners started leasing to the trucks. I used to work for a truck that's no longer there, but since I've been there since day one, I've stayed on board and kind of tried to help the other trucks that have come on. I'm here to support the other owners. I just see it as a very positive usage. I myself have seen and had to stop the homeless outside of business hours when they think somebody's not there, who might try to jump the fence and stuff. So when you see just that, when they're trying to work around business hours, I can only imagine how bad it would get if nobody was there. And I've also seen the damage that was done on the inside of the building. So that aside, you also obviously have the economic effect and whatnot. I just feel like it would be very detrimental if they shut it down. Also having the knowledge that it's not going to be a long-term permanent fix because the property owner does have other plans for the property. He's just working on his plans, I believe. But again, I'm just here to support the trucks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'd like to next call on, is it Ivan or Ivan, right? Medina? Ivan Medina?
Hola, buenas noches. Vengo en representación de Tacos y el Cámara. Queremos ver la manera de que retome la decisión de que no nos cierren, ya que pues nosotros dependemos de ese lugar, ya que hemos traído mucha gente que viene desde San Francisco, viene de San Mateo, viene de San José, a invertir. Nosotros hicimos una gran inversión y de ahí dependen nuestras familias.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I know what you're going to do. Yeah, go ahead. It's okay.
Habla en español y yo le hablo
Okay.
inglés.
Do you want to translate so far?
It's what you say.
No, but do you want to translate what you already said?
Yes.
That's okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's fine.
Can you please, just so, because it's a lot of information to repeat, so do you mind translating what he said so far?
Let's start from the beginning.
If you could translate in English, can you do
Sure,
that?
I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah, come to the mic and do that, please. And sorry, señor, él va a traducir en inglés.
Bueno, queremos que retomen la decisión para que no nos cierren.
He represented Tacos El Cámara. Is another food truck in the same location, and they're trying to see if you guys can reconsider the decision.
Ya que nosotros hicimos una gran inversión, somos habitantes de aquí de Hayward.
They already invest a lot of money, and they live in Hayward.
Y gracias a nuestro negocio hemos traído bastante gente que viene de San Francisco, San José, San Mateo.
Gracias a ese negocio, thanks to this business, they brought people from different areas, like San Jose, San Francisco,
San Mateo.
San Mateo,
Y nuestras familias todas dependen de ese patrimonio.
and his family and all the persons they included depend on this business.
Al cerrar ahí nos vamos a tener la necesidad de buscar otro condado u otro trabajo y cerrar nuestro negocio.
Yeah, they're gonna depend on this job. If you guys don't reconsider, they have to look for another job or look for something to support their families.
Nosotros hemos tratado de tener bastante limpia toda esa área, evitar que haya homeless, evitar que haya alguna vandalización.
Yeah, they're trying to keep the area clean and try to avoid those homely people. And they try to do their best in order to keep that area clean.
Y así como está la situación, pues tenemos miedo a quedarnos sin algún patrimonio al momento de cerrar
And they're gonna scare, because if they wanna close the corner, they wanna look for something else or just start over again.
Okay,
Eso es
okay.
todo.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Let's see. Next, I have, is it Rena Joel?
Hi, Hi, my name is Rena. I am a property owner of a fourplex and a former resident of Hayward. I want to say that we've owned this property for about 12, 13 years, and we worked with the Hayward PD to rid our neighborhood of some really bad gang violence that resulted in a death in our court. We registered all of our cameras with the city of Hayward so that the police department could have access. We facilitated a meeting with the school where our property was backed up to where the gang members would use as an escape route. We, with the task force, successfully eradicated that issue, made it a very safe environment for my tenants. So the city of Hayward has been great to us. Right now, we're facing a difficult challenge right now with the pandemic. We have a tenant. We had 4 tenants. One tenant who was a baker who during the pandemic, he was a baker in the financial district of San Francisco, did not have work for 2 months. We said, do not pay rent, buy groceries, don't pay rent. Eventually, he went back to work. We created a plan. He paid us back. Great. We had another tenant who was laid off from BART, and he gave us notice January 1st that he was going to be leaving. And I said, well, where are you going to go? He said, I don't know. I go, I don't know, your car? Or I don't know, you're going to go somewhere. He said, I don't know, my car. So we gave him 6 months free rent. And we said, just figure it out. We care about you. We understand you've been a tenant for 7 years. I'm not letting you go in your car. So he stayed, and then he eventually relocated to Columbia. We now have a third tenant who, during the pandemic, sublet significantly to the point where there was significant wear and tear in the unit. Once vaccines were available, we finally found a contractor that was willing to work in the unit while the tenants were present. That was a very difficult thing because people were like, I don't want to go. Can you vacate them? So it was super challenging to find somebody who was willing to work in the unit with the tenants. So we remodeled their bathroom, which was $20,000. During that process, we identified that they were extensively subletting. They had interior locks on the bedrooms. They had 2-3 people per bedroom. It explains why there was significant mold and humidity and a wild variety of issues. At that point in time, we said, we need to fix all these other things. We need to save a little bit of money. We'll come back to you in a few months. We came back to them in October. They refused to answer our phone calls. They refused to, meet us, to let us inspect the property with a contractor. Instead, they went to the city in January and filed a complaint, which was great because now we get to fix everything we want to fix. When our suspicion with the contractor was that when we open up the walls, we will probably find mold, on the framing. And we said that the work is so extensive, we think you guys should move, and you're happy to come back. And they said that they could not, they were not willing to move. So I said, why would you live here if you're saying that the mold is hurting your son's health? Why are you doing this? And they said, well, we can't afford it. So I said, oh my God, why don't I give you guys too much? First they asked for $25,000, and I said, I don't have that much money, but I can give you a couple months of free rent. And I can give you $11,000 on April 1st when you guys move out. How do you guys feel about that? That'll give you 2 months to save enough money for first month's rent and deposit. And I had them sign a piece of paper outlining that. My fault was that I did not say that there was an expiration, because I assumed that April 1st, the move out, would be the expiration of this agreement. When going back to there a week ago, I saw that they were not making any plans to move, and our contractor was still remedying the issues in this case file. And they said, well, they had confided in my handyman that they were not going to leave until the summer.
Rena, I apologize. Time is up, but we did get your email, and
yes.
and thank you. And we are reviewing that right now.
I just want to say one last thing, which is I know that there are tenants that are vulnerable, and I know that the county ordinance is about to expire. And I know that you guys are going to put protections in place, which I agree with. However, please put in protections to protect the tenants or the landlords from people like Armando and Maria who are violating it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let's see. Let me see if there's any more. I don't think there's any more public comments. And we have one last public comment. Councilmember Marquez.
Mayor, thank you. I'm actually going to come down to the podium to make this public comment. Hi, I'm a member of the public now. I'm going to ask our Mayor Pro Tem to please come down here and join me. These are for you. A very wise woman once said that it's important to give people their flowers. So I want to give you your flowers, and I just want to acknowledge you. It's still Black History Month, and want to acknowledge you as being the first Black African-American woman elected to the Hayward City Council. It's a huge accomplishment, and unfortunately, she was elected during COVID-19, so she didn't get the pomp and circumstances that we've all gotten. So this isn't a corsage, but maybe you could enjoy it a little bit longer. And just want to tell you how much I admire, she has a toddler, and it's not easy juggling this work, people. Be nice to her. Everyone's very critical, and they have no idea what it takes to do this work. So I just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you for your contributions, and ask all of my colleagues to come down here and join us in a photo. Do you want to say anything? Do you want to say anything? Congratulations. Do you want to say anything?
Thank you. This was so unexpected. I really, thank you all. I know I ran during COVID, and it was a really tough time, and I want to acknowledge all my colleagues, because I know how hard this job is, and I can't imagine what you all were dealing with when COVID first happened. So I just want to give you your kudos as well for managing the city during a very difficult time. So thank you, and I just want to thank my family, because I know I did on Zoom, but I'm here now. I want to thank you to my husband. I couldn't do this without your support, and my mother. I couldn't do this without your support. And Greer, you motivate me to do anything I do, everything I do. So thank you all.
Okay, what do I do with my add pin here? Okay. All right. Let's see. I've been up here on the dais quite some time, and I think this is the first that we've had a flower. How do you call it? Of like a intermission for flowers. I think that's what it is. So, hey, Okay, so I would like to close public comments and then proceed to the city manager's comments. And does the city manager have flowers or?
I unfortunately do not. I did not know that.
Confetti, please. Confetti.
Did not know that was a requirement this evening. I apologize. I could give you a Jolly Rancher. It's about all I got tonight. So just a couple of quick things. I did want to remind everyone that the state of emergency for the state of California, Alameda County, and the city of Hayward is all ending today. That does not mean COVID is not still around in our communities, and just a reminder to remember to stay safe with your health, and if you are feeling unwell, to stay home. And I think that's just a good reminder for all of us. It just also remind everyone that all of our council committee meetings, board and commission meetings will now be resuming as in-person meetings, starting with the balance of this week. We have both the Budget and Finance Committee and the Housing and Homelessness Task Force, which will be meeting in person. We will be providing a continued hybrid participation for members of the public, but Under state law, council members must appear in person with very limited exceptions. So I just wanted to remind everyone that those meetings will now be back in person, but still have a hybrid option for participation. Just a couple other quick announcements. Our new solid waste and recycling contract with Waste Management starts tomorrow, March 1st. Will last for 10 years and has several new elements that will keep Hayward in compliance with new state laws. But just a reminder that the contract retains existing services such as the compost giveaway and bulky collection services for residents. If you have unwanted items around the house, like an old couch, you get 2 free bulky collection service allocations a year, and Waste Management will remove those items. You need to call to schedule. When I moved here, forgot that, and I called one of those private providers and paid to pick up my junk, which was unfortunate. So don't make my mistake, and call Waste Management and schedule your 2 free bulky pickups. Another just sort of note in our sustainability belt, we are now providing for unleaded aviation fuel at the airport. And that is basically has less environmental impacts. UL94 avgas has been approved by the FAA for use in many piston engine powered aircraft now. And so just another way we are trying to green our city. So just wanted to share that update with everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I guess now Councilmember Syrup has better fuel to fuel his jet. Is that what that is? Okay. Moving on to, thank you for that. Moving on to consent calendar. And I believe we were asked to pull item 3. Was that to pull?
To continue it.
To continue it.
mid-March.
Okay. So I'm pulling item number 3, and then if I have a motion for items 1 through 2, and then 4 through 7.
Mayor, may I also pull items 1, 2, 6, and 7?
1, 2, 6, and 7. Okay, so you're gonna make me 4, 5, and well, let me ask this question. Do you have just simple questions, or do you have
Simple questions for 1 and 2, more in-depth questions for number 6.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Let's get the simple questions for 1 and 2, move everything, and then for item 7, you said, right? 7? More
6.
6.
And 7, I have like a simple comment. So here.
Okay, why don't you do 1, 2, and 7? Go ahead with 1, 2, and 7, and then we'll move on.
Okay, so for 1, plans on the pavement improvement project. I'll start with the anecdote. I saw a kid riding their bike on A Street, and they were on the sidewalk, even though there was a bike lane on the street, which means that bike lane isn't safe enough for them to use. So part of this pavement improvement project includes 9.8 miles of bike lanes, and I appreciate staff committing to working with Bike East Bay on the implementation of those bike lanes. I just want to communicate my interest in making sure that we are making them protected bike lanes. We have an opportunity to make our city more bikeable and reach our sustainability goals. And I think if we're going to expend staff time and resources on actually putting them down, I want them to be done right so that we don't end up with another kid on A Street ignoring the bike lane because it's too dangerous. That's my comment for item 1. Item 2, call for bids for the La Vista project. I see that we have HARD representatives here tonight. I'm happy to ask the questions. I also wanted to open up the floor if you wanted to use public comment to ask. I was wondering if we could speak more to the Keyway funding. The report mentions that the bids for construction of the Keyways have come in too high and are now being folded into the park costs. I'd just like to know how this impacts the construction of the park, and will the developer or the landscape lighting district pay for these changes?
As I understand it, and someone else can chime in as well, the Keyways are required to help facilitate the development on the Caltrans Parcel Group 3, which is the affordable housing project that's right below that. So we're still, and it also is required to help build the park. I mean, it's basically preventing landslide potential in that area. So we've been working with HARD, we've been working with the city staff team to figure out funding options for those Keyways. And I think the ongoing maintenance of those could be potentially funded through the GAD, which the Parcel Group 3 will be required to join, I believe. So I think there's sort of the ongoing maintenance of that, but in terms of the initial capital construction, because it is also related to making sure the park can be constructed, that's why we are wrapping it into the project costs.
Thank you for the response, and Hard, I hope you find the answer satisfactory. And then just for item number 7, briefly, in the agenda Q&A packet, staff added that they could evaluate whether funds could be utilized towards incentivizing TOD or housing at South Hayward BART. I know this was a comment that was brought up. I think it might have been around the parking, or I forget which specific work section that was, but there was interest in it, and so I just would want to add my interest to that when it comes before Council Infrastructure or any other appropriate committee. And with that, I'm happy to move items 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7 before discussing 6.
I had a question on 2.
Question number 2, go ahead.
Question on 2, yeah. So there's been some references in there about having discussions with HARD, but I didn't see anything noted other than some dates going back to 2017 and 2018. So with the new, the change in the budget, have those conversations been more recent?
I was involved in a conversation a couple weeks ago with the general manager and a number of staff to try to resolve a lot of these issues. And our public works staff are in communication with staff at HARD on a regular basis in terms of capital planning and the funding agreement for La Vista and all of that. So at the staff level, we've been communicating quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
And then I see Councilmember Roach has a comment. Oh, she took it off. Okay.
No, I do.
Oh, okay. But before you make your comment, can I get a second just so that we can start question? Seconded by Councilmember Zermeño. Councilmember Roach, please.
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick comment to support Councilmember Syrup's, advocating for making sure we're designing the bike lanes properly, because this is our chance to do it, so we're not doing something retroactive that didn't quite work. So I was also pleased, like Councilmember Syrup said, that we're going to work with Bike East Bay as well on that one, and I would just encourage staff to continue to do that, make these safe lanes for everyone. Thank you.
And then Councilmember Syrup, your name is back up here, or is that just?
Sorry, let's move forward with the motion if there's no other comments.
Okay.
And then I'll address 6.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Syrup, seconded by Councilmember Zermeño. Madam Clerk, if you could take the roll. And there is no public comments.
Correct. Thank you. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez? Aye. Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Zermeño? Yes. Mayor Salinas?
Yes. And now item number 7, or I'm sorry, item number 6, Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate staff responding to my questions about the purchase of body armor. Just to clarify, this is coming from the Capital Improvement Program, is that correct?
I believe our acting police chief is on the call. Brian, did you want to respond?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, it is going to be coming from our CIP.
And when you say our CIP, is there one that's specific to the police department, or is this the city's general CIP?
It's money that's been allocated to the police department from the city's general CIP.
And so I just want to make sure that this isn't an additional increase that's being requested. This is just authorization for purchase from a predetermined amount of the CIP. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're coming to the council because it exceeds the $75,000 limit for our decision to make that purchase without council approval.
Understood. And then one of the comments in the Q&A packet said that they cannot be used operationally if they are outside of the manufacturer's warranty once they reach the 5-year mark. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, so ballistic vests, regardless of the level, have a 5-year basically warranty from the manufacturer. So essentially they guarantee proper function within that time frame. However, anything beyond that, they will not guarantee proper function. And so as a general rule, not just here in Hayward, but police departments across the state of California, at the 5-year mark, replace their vests. That's true for the ballistic vests that we issue people, when they onboard with us, and every 5 years thereafter.
Thank you. how much does the effectiveness of the vest drop after 5 years?
So I think that depends on a number of different factors. So the material will break down, with extensive usage. These particular vests are assigned to people that have to operate in a variety of different environments, inclement weather. We ask them to do a lot of physical activities, not just in training, but in operations as well. And so a lot of it depends on how they're used. But the guarantee is for 5 years from the manufacturer. And the reason that we replace them at the 5-year mark is because as a city, I don't think we want to be in a position where we have a failure during an operation that results in injury.
Got it. Thank you. And then last question is, can you explain the reason why we're going from the CIP fund versus the police department's general budget, especially given the amount of vacancies we currently have? And what I'm assuming is not a high likelihood of filling all those positions before the end of the fiscal year.
I'm going to jump in with, there's differentiation between sort of capital supplies, which have a depreciation life, and then operating expenses. So, typically when it is a piece of equipment that is utilized for multiple years, then that is budgeted through the capital improvement program. Both the police department and fire department have an allocation in the CIP for operating supplies. They're called operating supplies, but they're actually capital purchases because they last over multiple years. So typically the operating budget is used for more dispensable items like office supplies, things that, bullets sometimes because they go relatively quickly if they're used, but things that are going to last over a period of time are budgeted through the capital plan.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for answering my questions. My general thoughts are, so I did a little bit of research on this. I watched more YouTube videos than I'd like to admit of expired bulletproof vests being shot by different types of rounds. And they withstood a lot of heat. And so when I hear about the 5-year warranty mark, I understand my interest and the interest of the police department is to preserve public safety and to make sure that our officers are safe as well. But the interest of the manufacturer is to produce a good product, but also to generate profits. And so my concern is this 5-year warranty mark is just a way to encourage agencies to continue to purchase their product, which gives me a little bit of pause because $130,000 is enough to fund a staffing position in the city with benefits, and that could be providing community services to folks. I also was happy to move forward with a motion last week to receive, I think, approximately $70,000 of grant money from the Sheriff's Department that I believe was supposed to go towards supplies or equipment. And so, my concern here is when money was just allocated, using more of it, is this truly the best use of our funds if the vests themselves can still be functional after the manufacturer's 5-year mark? I understand there might be some liability concerns, and that I'd be curious and interested to talk about, but for the moment, I'm not certain that I'm in support of this item. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Cermeño.
Thank you, Acting Chief Matthews, for that explanation. I do agree with one point by my colleague Syrup that it is for public safety of our officers, and that's important. And with that in mind, I'll move on the item.
Moved by Councilmember Cermeño.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Goldstein. And let's see, there's no public comment. Madam City Clerk, if you take the roll.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup?
No.
Councilmember Cermeño?
Sí.
Mayor Salinas?
Item passes with 6 yeses, 1 no. And then I'd like to now close the consent calendar, move on to legislative business. And this is legislative business number 8, LB 23-009, Cannabis Regulations Revised Ordinance, introduction of an ordinance amending Article 14, Chapter 6 of the Hayward Municipal Code regarding commercial cannabis business by amending section 6-14.13 relating to commercial cannabis permit applications, amending sections 6-14-14 relating to operating and performance standards, and adding section 6-14.18 relating to enforcement, finding that this action is subject to CEQA common sense exemption report from city attorney. Say that 4 times. And I will now have the city attorney, I believe City Attorney Lawson kick this off, or City Attorney Vigilia.
I'll make the presentation on this.
Thank you, sir.
This
Okay,
item,
go right ahead.
Mr. Mayor. If we can have the presentation pulled up. Okay, great. So these are updates to the commercial cannabis ordinance. And just a brief overview, they're really intended to be minor cleanup issues. So the first proposal is some minor cleanup language, clarifying that the permit applications are accompanied by a fee as opposed to a refundable deposit. At the beginning of the program, applicants paid a refundable deposit, and as part of the extensive updates that took place to the cannabis program in 2021, an application fee was adopted by the council instead. But unfortunately, as part of the process, the references to the deposit stayed in the ordinance, and we just need to clean that up. So that's one of the items. The other item is related to the performance standards that operators have to follow. Again, there was just some minor language that was missing as part of the update, and we're just adding a little bit more specific reference to where those performance standards are found. They're actually found in the zoning ordinance, so we're adding that. We're clarifying that the violations are subject to various existing administrative processes that are in the municipal code. And finally, we're proposing an enforcement tool that authorizes the city attorney to seek civil penalties against violators in the event that the city institutes civil litigation. And so the proposed cleanup language, again, the top bullet is related to the deposit, the leftover deposit language. We're going to move to or we're updating it to specify that it's a non-refundable fee. And just for clarity, we've been working with a non-refundable fee since 2021, and so we're just aligning the language with the practice and the original intent of the 2021 updates. And the same goes for 6-14.14. The intent originally was to specify that the performance standards were in the zoning ordinance, and inadvertently that connective language was left out, so we're adding that with these updates. And this is just a breakdown of what the existing administrative tools are. Essentially, we have a administrative fine process that is used by code enforcement. That's Chapter 1, Article 3, and Chapter 1, Article 7. We have 3 different nuisance abatement processes in the ordinance: public nuisances, social nuisance ordinance, and the community preservation ordinance. And the ordinance amendments will specify that all of these mechanisms are available to address violations of the cannabis ordinance. And also, the city attorney also currently has the authority to seek injunctions to stop the conduct of violators. But what we're proposing is also to authorize the city attorney to seek civil penalties as part of that process. And the civil penalty amounts are based on existing administrative penalty amounts that were previously adopted by the council back in 2021. And just for reference here, they would range from $5,000 to $15,000 per day that a violation exists, based on how many repeat violations occur. And if cultivation violations are involved, it's between $1,000 to $5,000 per plant, depending on the frequency of the violations. And just to introduce our cannabis working group for our newer members and to refresh everyone's recollection, we have the planning division involved. Jeremy Lekirko, the planning manager, is on the call, available to answer questions. With our code enforcement team, Phil Nichols is our code enforcement manager. He's also available this evening to answer questions related to code enforcement. And then members from the police department, Detective Gabrielle Wright and Sergeant Mike Carpenter. Unfortunately, they couldn't be available this evening. If there are questions related to police-related issues, we can take them and send you responses from our police team offline. And with that, I'm happy to take questions at this time, if council has any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Zermeño.
Thank you, Michael. Could you go back to 2 slides, please? There, that's fine. 5 to 15,000 per day violation. So what would be a 5,000 violation and what would be a 15,000 violation? Why not just 10,000?
I think it's based on, so 5,000 would be for the first violation, and if it continues to, if you've got repeat violations after a certain amount of time, the fines increase.
Okay,
And I
first,
think,
okay, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
First, second, 3 violations?
correct, yeah.
Okay, 5, 10, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Very good. You maybe want to, that will be explained when the ordinance is written?
Well, it is actually, is also, it's in the master fee schedule already.
Okay.
And, yeah, that language would be in the, it's
Thank
in
you.
the ordinance as well.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. I was wondering, can you give us some examples? Like, what is it, what prompted the enforcement tools to be enunciated this way? Like, what's going on that these violations are happening? What made this necessary?
It was really more of a, to make it easier for city staff and also people who are looking through the code to understand what the different enforcement tools are. We wanted to make it basically a self-contained ordinance. And without
I'm
it,
wondering, what is a violation? Like, what would they have to do
Sure.
to violate this?
So I can start off, and then Phil Nichols, our code enforcement manager, can also add on to it. But basically, for licensed operators, it could be operating outside of the conditions of the approval of the license. That could constitute a violation. And then it would be any other type of unlicensed activity. So law enforcement does encounter illegal cultivation operations, primarily in the industrial corridor.
I mean, so like if, like for example, if they're just a dispensary, but they also have an illegal grow operation happening, and are we seeing that? Is that happening?
I don't know if that particular scenario is happening. I know law enforcement is aware of just illegal grows happening in vacant
Mostly
industrial
just
places.
illegal grows without permit or without authorization.
Okay, so that's what I'm wondering. So if it's an illegal grow operation, I assume, like it said in the staff report, that there are, regular, like they're breaking the law in general, and so that's a violation of that. Because if they're an illegal operation, then they don't come under the ordinance, do they?
Well, so the ordinance requires a permit for any type of cannabis activity. So they would in that respect because they're operating without a license.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd also say it just gives us an additional enforcement tool. You know, you can have these what would be called more just administrative penalties in addition to if there's any criminal activity. I mean, cannabis is legal now, so
Right.
it's tricky, but this gives us the ability to at least try to shut down the operation if they don't have permits.
Okay. Okay. And then my other question about the fee is, so is the fee that became, I understand this is just a sort of updating of the code because it became non-refundable, but did that become non-refundable because there's staff time that it took, that the fee takes, they have to pay the fee because it takes staff time to vet their application?
Yeah. So when the cannabis updates were being prepared in 2021, a consultant sort of did a study and did a review of all the staff time that was involved in reviewing the initial applications from the first round and determined that, the fee was a more appropriate way to go. That basically there was a lot of uncaptured, there was a lot of uncaptured and unreimbursed time.
Okay.
Yeah, and that
Okay.
was the recommendation.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report. My question, I don't know necessarily if it falls under enforcement, but my concern with cannabis is in the past, we had approved a specific retailer who ended up changing their name and the business model. So how would that be captured, that issue? Where would that lie in preventing that from happening again?
Right, and I'm not sure if we addressed that during the 2021 updates or not. I think we might have. Jeremy is on the line. He might be able to address that a little bit more.
Council, yeah, Jeremy Locurico, planning manager with the city. That was actually something that we did look into when we did our cannabis update in 2021. There was a concern about branding as it was based on what the council originally reviewed and approved, and ultimately what ended up happening in particular with cookies. And so we did add a provision that any change of branding or any change of mode or character of an operation would require city approval again. So we did include that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Let's see. Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the short presentation. I'm curious, what is the process to get permitted currently?
I would defer to our planning manager. I think he can give us some good information there.
Yeah, so the current process that we have, and we're actually open, we have an open period right now. So if anyone is interested in applying for a cannabis license in the city, please submit your pre-application. The process that it currently involves is there's a pre-screening. And the pre-screening process is a cursory review of a business plan that an applicant would need to submit, as well as be subject to background check and live scan. Once the applicant has done that, then the next step would be to proceed into City Hall and be interviewed by an internal working group, which in the past was consisted of police department, code enforcement, and planning. We would interview the applicant, not only to make sure, I mean, even though cannabis is legal, it is still a heavily regulated operation and heavily regulated use state level. And so we wanted to make sure that these operators understand the parameters of these regulations, not only from the local level, but also to make sure that they're aware of the state regulations. And if they're able to pass that, then at that point, they are welcome and invited to submit a full application to the city, which would be evaluated. There's a commercial cannabis license that would be specific to their cannabis operation, and then there's additional land use review and entitlement that would be required for the planning division. So that's a general process. It has been streamlined significantly from the original process, which was an RFP-based system. And that was also part of the reason why we went from a deposit-based to a fee-based. We heard from many applicants that the deposit base was not super equitable for them. And so what we ended up doing is we changed the pre-screening mechanism. And instead of charging applicants $5,000 a deposit, we have reduced that to a $2,500 flat fee. So it is still intended to cover staff costs, but it does so in a way that is a little bit more equitable for all the operators that were interested, and doesn't pose a barrier to entry.
Thank you. And for parts of the process that involve things like the background check, are those mandated by state regulations, or are those just a local regulation that was put in place by the ordinance?
They're both. So the state already does require background checks. And what we did is we basically mirrored our regulations with the states. And so if an applicant would be disqualified from the state, they would automatically be disqualified from the city of Hayward from applying. But so what we enshrined in our updated ordinance is not much different from what the state requires in terms of their background checks and their screening.
Got it. Thank you. And do we have any demographic information about who hasn't been in compliance that we've been unable to enforce in the past?
In terms of some of our local operators, the ones that are currently in operation, those that have collaborated well with the city, I think they're doing fine. We have had several of them that have encountered some issues from the state level, just trying to get, their approval from the state. The state has changed their regulatory authority, and you probably have read in the newspaper the challenges that the state is having with their cannabis program. So I don't necessarily would chalk that up to our local ordinance. I think everything that we've done has been really intended to streamline and allow operators a more seamless entry into Hayward. But we have not, to the degree we've experienced a lot of issues. Most of the calls for service from the police department and for code enforcement are really stemming from these illegal operations that, unfortunately, that was also part of the purpose of including this penalty structures to serve as a deterrent.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to confirm, the internal cannabis working group works on policy and code enforcement. Just confirm, right? No other?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So one question I had for the internal cannabis group is, have we also looked at restorative justice as a possibility to respond to some of these issues in addition to fees?
I know it was part of the discussion during the 2021, there was a lot of equity discussion during the 2021 updates, but we haven't looked at specific restorative justice programs with respect to enforcement yet, but that's certainly something we could look into.
Some if that's something you can look into and something that we can look at possibly partnering with Keep Hayward Clean and Green or some other community service that could help our community, that would be great if you can look into that. And then the other question I had was about the $2,500 that just covers staff time in terms of zoning and permitting, or what is the $2,500 include again?
So the $2,500 covers our review. Part of our review includes hiring an outside consultant that has expertise. Mm-hmm. We have used ICF in the past following an RFP. They were selected, and we have used them to be able to do our pre-screening. When we get applicants submit a preliminary business plan, our teams internally don't have the expertise to know what questions to ask. And so we've really leaned on them to a good degree to provide us some direction and some guidance on the proper questions to ask to make sure that we're getting these solid operators. But also to your point, it does cover there is staff time that goes into this. And the direction that we heard from council when we developed the program originally back in 2017 is that they really wanted this program to be as cost neutral as possible. And so we've tried to balance that, and to the degree that we've adjusted those fees when we did our update in 2021. And to the degree we've also committed to future adjustments if warranted. That is something that we will continue to explore as our cannabis program evolves.
Okay, and thank you to Councilmember Marquez for asking about branding. One question I had was about operators who have acquired property and there's been no movement. So just wanted to know about are there any repercussions for that? Is there something we can do to address that?
The typical process now for applicants that secure their land use entitlement, most of the land use entitlements, like a conditional use permit, have a 3-year lifespan. Mm-hmm. And so if they don't pull their permits or they don't take action on vesting, then they would have effectively abandoned that license. Certainly a commercial cannabis permit, because it is issued by the city council, that discretion remains with the city council on whether or not they would choose to revoke those licenses. But in terms of the land use entitlement, there are certain expirations that have already been enshrined in the Muni Code that give them certain time limits in order to vest before they expire.
Okay. All right. And this is a last random question or request. Can we just confirm tonight that Garden of Eden is not in Hayward? Can we just confirm that for everybody to hear that?
I can confirm that, yes.
Thank you for confirming that Garden of Eden is in Alameda County and not in the city of Hayward. Thank you.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have anywhere a list of the kinds of complaints and enforcement activities that we've already taken with cannabis operators?
I don't know that if we have a, I think the code enforcement and PD probably have the data. And if council was interested in a briefing, we'd probably put something together to get you that information. I know PD does track on the criminal side, the cultivation operations they encounter.
I would just say some of that's not going to be available publicly, so that may be something we'd have to schedule with the council in closed session to go through if the council had an interest in doing that.
I see. So I have spoken to some of the businesses close to one of the cannabis retailers, and a couple of the business owners there complain that although people are supposed to buy their product and then leave the area and not consume smokables, for example, in the parking lot, that does seem to happen with frequent regularity. And I just wanted to know if you were aware of that, if we're doing something about that.
That's probably something we would have to run with through our PD, and I don't know if our code enforcement manager has any information about receiving those types of complaints.
Yeah, good afternoon, council member. We track a good amount of complaints, especially for illegal cannabis. We haven't received any reports as of yet for from the activity outside of the cannabis shops that are active.
Okay.
But we, I would say that we do have a way to enforce that if that does occur, if we do get those complaints in.
Okay, I'll go back and talk to those business owners and see what, if anything, they've done about it. They might be reluctant to do the reports for fear of reprisal. So not sure if we have a different mechanism, but I'm guessing they could always report it anonymously, right?
They could do that, or we can actually, if we know the locations of the few that we're interested in, we can kind of do some stepped-up enforcement in those areas and monitor it.
Well, the two people that talked to me said it was the B Street parking lot. I think you know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I sure do. Okay. We'll keep an eye on that one.
Terrific, thank you. That's all for me.
Okay, since there's no more questions, I'd like to close council questions, open up for public comment. And seeing no public comment, and there's no public comment online, I'd like to close public comment, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move the item, Mayor.
Moved by Councilmember Marquez.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I saw Councilmember Syrups.
I have comments after this.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Roach. Councilmember Syrup, comment.
Thank you, Mayor Salinas.
Mayor, I'm sorry. Did you do public comments? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like the idea that Councilmember Andrews brought up about a restorative justice approach. I'm a little bit reluctant to vote in favor of the ordinance as it currently stands without having more data from the police department on what the violations actually look like. I understand this is administrative, but I'd like to see a component of it where we have somebody that's developing a business that may potentially generate revenue for the city, and rather than going immediately into fines and enforcement, is there a way to possibly develop their business in a legal manner so that they are permitted and they're bringing in revenue for the city and operating in a safe manner. I don't know if that sounds too idealistic, but I would have liked to see a component of that in this ordinance where it's not just immediate penalization, but maybe a process of helping develop what, in my opinion, is an entrepreneur. And I feel this way because if we're going to have cannabis in our city, you know, we should encourage it the same way we encourage the other nightlife facilities in our city. I worry that this continues a legacy of punishing cannabis retailers who don't have the capital to create official brick and mortar businesses. I think the background check is, I understand it's a state regulation, but that's another discriminatory practice when there are folks that have records because of building the market for cannabis in the first place, and that feels inequitable to me as well. So I'd feel more comfortable putting this forward after it was adjusted to be more proactive about developing the entrepreneurs that might be violating the law currently, but with a little bit of support from the city, may actually be able to support the city through tax revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Syrup. Item was moved by Councilmember Marquez, seconded by Councilmember Roach. City Clerk, can you take the roll?
I have a quick comment.
Oh, we have a Oh,
Go ahead,
I'm
you were
sorry.
first.
Councilmember Andrews.
I was just wondering if the maker of the motion would consider a friendly amendment to add a review of restorative justice aspects to response to these violations, as well as working with possibly economic development about creating some kind of infographic or some kind of flyer to go along with the violation about how they can submit for a permit?
Yes, but just to be clear that this ask is for a future look into and get back to us, not embedded in this ordinance. Is that
Correct.
accurate? Okay, yes, absolutely.
And if that was something that Councilmember Syrup would be open to?
If we can schedule these conversations, then yes.
So I guess to firm it up, just say, get back to us with an informational item in 6 months. Is that good for staff?
It doesn't have to be.
Or 9 months, just.
Or when this comes
That's
back, when this item comes back for review in the future.
We could do 6 months.
Oh, okay,
6 months, I
okay,
think, firms it.
perfect. Okay.
And then, I'm sorry, but I forgot who the seconder was. It
Councilmember
Roche?
Roach.
Yeah, and
wanna
I'm
make sure.
amenable to the amendment. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Marquez.
I was going to try to do that, but Mayor Pro Tem did it better, so good, done.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Goldstein.
I support the motion as amended.
Okay. And I support the motion, the second, with the amendment.
Did we call it?
Woo. Should I read the title of this item again? Madam City Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews?
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Mayor Salinas?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move on to council reports and announcements. Do we have any council reports and announcements? Councilmember Marquez.
No, sorry.
Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to get back to one of our public comments about the food trucks at the ranch and ask the city manager, is that something that we can seek perhaps a 30-day extension or something like that? And are there discussions ongoing?
So this was permitted during the pandemic under kind of the emergency provisions where we had allowed some of this to happen. I think one of the speakers mentioned our zoning code actually doesn't permit these temporary use permits for longer than a year. We did allow it already for longer than a year because of the pandemic and to continue to allow that. I think some of the concerns will be addressed in the street vendor ordinance where these types of permits will be considered. And so I think we're hopeful that that will address that. Unfortunately, even if we gave a 30-day extension, it wouldn't solve the problem. They would still have to close the operation, and so it could be a temporary closure until we get the food vendor ordinance completed, which hopefully will be done this summer. But that's unfortunately our zoning ordinance. We have to be consistent in enforcement, otherwise it prevents us from enforcing others, businesses that we may not want to continue to operate. So I understand and appreciate the concerns of the food trucks, but we're trying to balance enforcement and now that the state of emergency has ended. So hopefully we can get the food vendor ordinance done quickly and then reinitiate some sort of operation there at the ranch.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I just, if there's anything we can do to, be communicative and work with them, to help them, on the way. And if the owner finds that his plans are not going to move along quite as quickly and there is an opportunity to extend their opportunity to be there, then I would appreciate that communication to continue to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with the public that myself and Mayor Pro Tem Andrews attended, what night was it? Everything's a blur. Saturday night, the Oscar Grant Foundation Gala. So Oscar Grant is a young man we did lose to police violence. I apologize, but the year's escaping me if it was 2009 or 10. I apologize, I don't remember the year, but it's been some time. But his mother has started a foundation, and all of the money raised for that foundation goes towards scholarships. I think they announced that they've given over $100,000. They also run a basketball league. They've partnered with our school district on a backpack drive and giveaway. So just wanted to acknowledge the great work of that foundation, and it was really touching to have so many mothers attend that dinner that have lost their children. So just want to remind us to, try to see each other for our humanity and do our best to keep everyone safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Councilmember Marquez, for mentioning the Oscar Grant Foundation. Also wanted to mention that the Tri-City Delta Sigma Theta sorority is having a listening session at our downtown library for African American students and parents, grades 6 through 12, on March 18th from 12 to 2 p.m. in the Fremont Bank Foundation Room B. So if you're interested in participating in that, you can go to socialaction.htcac@gmail.com. Thanks.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Next week is, tomorrow is March, the beginning of March, and March is known for March Madness basketball. And the good news is that Chabot College is starting early, and they have qualified for the Sweet 16 of the state community college tournament. So we have number 16, top 16 out of 112 community colleges in California. So congratulations to the Chabot Gladiators. They play this Saturday against San Jose City College. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe it was last Friday, the Hayward Area Recreation and Parks District, HARD, the school district, and the Deputy Sheriff's Activity League, is that what the D stands for? Worked together to open a futsal? Is that the sport? Okay, I hadn't heard of it until then, but they opened up some brand new futsal courts at the Cherryland Elementary School that are available for the public to use and play. And it was a great event attended by Assemblymember Liz Ortega and several other folks in the community. And I just wanted to congratulate them on the creation of this beautiful public resource. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Excuse me. Move on to council referrals. There are no council referrals. I'm sorry. Go back to public comment or council comments and Councilmember Andrews.
I was planning on going after Councilmember Zermania. I was going to say today is the last day of Black History Month, so just a reminder, every month is Black History Month, and it's everyone's history. And then tomorrow is Women's History Month, so just wanted to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Then there are no council referrals. And then move on to adjournment. There are 3 individuals that we will be adjourning tonight's meeting. The first individual I'd like to adjourn is in memory of Lewis Jordan. Lewis Jordan he was a longtime City of Hayward employee. He worked for the city for 29 years. He was the first African American to retire from active duty from the City of Hayward. He had volunteered for many hours and for a very long time. As he was a member of the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Club, and he was active in the Northern California chapter, in the Northern California chapter of the Girls and Boys Club. I apologize, and he was also very active in other community service organizations amongst staff, fellow staff. He was highly revered, greatly respected, and I'm sure staff and city manager reach out to his family, and we can find a place to plant a tree in his memory. Also, I'd like to also acknowledge, excuse me, another longtime city employee, Majid I'm going to say this incorrectly, Hafizadeh. And let me see if I can, let's see. It is with great sadness that we share with you the news of the passing of former Public Works employee Majid Hafizadeh. Majid passed away on February 21st, 2023, at the age of 64 in Houston, Texas, where he was receiving treatment for cancer. Let's see, Majid started working for the city of Hayward in 1990 as an assistant engineer and later as an associate engineer. He was later promoted as acting city traffic engineer. He retired in July of 2018, and he joined the town of Danville's traffic team. Throughout his career in the city of Hayward, he worked on virtually every major traffic and road project in the city. And I know the planning department, and I know our public works director, Alex Amiri, is incredibly sad for the passing of Majid and his colleagues. And God bless his family, and I'm sure the city staff and city manager, if you can reach out to his family and arrange and designate a place for a tree to be planted in his honor. Also, on Saturday, many people in Alameda County, particularly people in Alameda County District 2, which includes Hayward, Union City, Newark, and parts of Fremont, all gathered at the Union City Veterans Memorial in Union City. And to honor the contributions and to honor the memory of Alameda County Supervisor Richard Valle. And what I'd like to do is, I know Alameda County Supervisor Richard Valle, we all knew him, and I wanted to provide an opportunity for each council member to make a comment if they would like to. And I guess I can just go down the dais. Council Member Cermeño.
Thank you. Don Ricardo, as I called him all the time, he used to call me, he called me Don Francisco. A great man, certainly a fantastic gentleman. The attention that he put to detail, the attention that he put to people in need, the attention that he put to the workers of Alameda County and the Bay Area was tremendous. I think it's something that will mark him as someone who needs to be remembered. And if we could all copy those sentiments of his, be tremendous. I don't know if he learned that love of humanity and with his experience in the Vietnam War, but he certainly was an example of somebody with heart. He should have lived in Hayward because his heart was tremendous. And as you know, Hayward's the heart of the Bay. That attention to detail, the attention to what people needed, the attention to ensure that every worker, that every family was well fed and attended to and had a job was just tremendous. And then, of course, having founded Tri-Set in Union City, showed his love for Mom Earth to ensure that we would be greener and decrease our carbon footprint. Those and many other things. The one thing that stood out at the memorial that we had for him at Union City was the happiness, was the variety and the diversity of the people who were there. So we had mariachi, because that's what he liked. We had ballet folklorico, that's what he liked. We had the Scottish windpipe, no, not the windpipe, bagpipe, that's what he liked. And it was just tremendous. The speakers, folks from St. Rose Hospital, Nate Miley, it was just tremendous. Don Ricardo was extremely happy. And I'm glad that we're able, or now I'm able to share a little bit about him. And he is a strong person who remembered Don Ricardo, descansa en paz. Gracias.
Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor, for giving us this opportunity to say something about Supervisor Valle. I didn't know him well. I just got to know him during my last campaign, but his kindness was absolutely evident, and his care and dedication to all he served was something I think we can all, aspire to and use as a role model. I know I do, and I want to say I agree with the memorial. You often go to celebrations of life, and they're still very somber, and there's a lot of sadness in the room. But this was truly joyful. It was really a celebration. I think people were having a good time, and I think that really, like you said, I think his happiness really shone through that day, and I was really pleased to be there. So thank you.
Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor, for this opportunity. I do want to give my sincere condolences to his wife, Barbara, his daughter, Monica, his son, Andrew, all of his friends, everyone that he loved in District 2. I know one of his best friends is near to many of us here because he lives in Hayward, Aubrey, and he also spoke at the Celebration of Life event, and it was a beautiful, touching event. I do believe that Supervisor Valle was looking down on us, and he controlled the weather because it was warm and it was a beautiful day. So I'll remember him fondly. He's someone who was extremely generous, and he was a partner. The city of Hayward started a seed money for a program called Rising Leaders, and he just elevated that program and is like taking it on a state level. So it's just amazing to see his support in really investing in vulnerable populations. And I always admired the fact that he was very proud of being from Dakota. I don't know if he spoke Spanish fluently. I only heard him speak a couple words, but I always admired that, someone who's not a fluent Spanish speaker, someone who is Latino and proud, but not necessarily fluent, but still representing their community well. So I just want to tell him thank you for his service, and his legacy continues in all of his great initiatives. Thank you.
Councilmember Andrews, or Mayor Pro Tem Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to first send my condolences to the family, but I've known Richard over the past couple of years, and I always remember his smile underneath that mustache. And he actually was at a lot of Hayward events. The last time I saw him, he was at Science in the Park. And I had an idea of what he was going through, and he just asked me, "How am I doing?" Which I just thought that just spoke to his character. It was a great event. He also was instrumental, along with Councilmember Marquez, in providing much needed funding for Juneteenth this past year. Another fond memory I have with him was painting the mural at the Eden Youth and Family Center, and how much he enjoyed doing that art project. And it just seems like he really cared about kids, and I think he probably right with you, Mayor Salinas, and really promoting activities for youth. So I'm going to miss seeing him around Hayward. It's a huge loss for our community, and thank you for all you've done for us, Supervisor Valle.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yes, I will always remember Richard Valle as kind-hearted, thoughtful, and an elegant man. My condolences go out to his family and to his staff, who I know loved him dearly. And, I definitely appreciated his involvement in Science in the Park, and I hope that will continue. He really kind of was very innovative in how he approached our community. And anyway, I will remember that. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Syra.
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to Councilmember Roach, my regret with Supervisor Valle is I really didn't have the opportunity to get to know him as well as I wanted to, and I wanted to. In the short amount of time that I did know him, we were supposed to get coffee on the campaign trail, and he actually had double booked himself for another campaign event. And before I knew it, I found myself at his home. And I could just see, even at that stage in his health, how much he just exuded warmth and compassion and kindness to everyone around him. And in a lot of ways, he was the model public servant. The more I learned about him and just not just his legacy as a supervisor, but his work on TriSet and in the community and as a council member, when we talk about a lifelong public servant, there it is. There's the example. And I like what Councilmember Marquez said about his legacy living on through his projects, but his legacy also lives on through all of us who I believe he was supportive of in our races. And so, when I think about Supervisor Valle, I see him as someone to aspire to in the roles that we currently inhabit. So I thank him for his service. I offer my condolences to his staff and his family, and we have some big shoes to fill.
Thank you. I've known Richard for a very long time. My family and his family have known each other for quite some time. And, being a young councilman, I remember when I first started this job, we would meet on occasion at Emma Villas over on Mission Boulevard. And we always met early in the morning. It was, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And, he had this, as everyone has said up here, he had this sort of, this calm about him, and he just, he spoke very low, and he had this very low voice, but he just had this sort of calm about him. No matter, regardless of the politic of the day, regardless of what was going on, he always sort of spoke with this sense of calmness. And, some mornings we would talk about politics. Some mornings we'd talk about, he was born in Southeast Texas. He'd talk about, being a kid in Southeast Texas, and then he moved, of course, to Dakota. But, and then, some mornings he would talk about Vietnam, and he'd talk about being a Chicano Vietnam veteran and that experience. And it was, those are the moments that I'm going to miss for sure. Today was recycling pickup day. And I was, I had a couple of Zoom meetings at home, and I was in between a meeting, and I heard the TriSet truck pull up. And I turned around, I looked out the front window, and, like clockwork, there it was. And there was just a brief moment where I kind of sat there, and I was like, there's Richard right there. He's still with us. And so God bless him, and we're all going to miss him. And yes.
One of the things that the city of Hayward owes to him is our future STAC Center. So maybe that's something that we can consider in the future, as far as a name, if we're looking for some kind of a name. Because he started that. I remember the very first meeting that I went to, that there he was leading it. Thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, I would stand corrected, City Manager, but I believe tomorrow, March 1st, starts the renewal of the TriSet contract.
Yes, TriSet is a subcontractor to Waste Management. Yes, that is accurate.
So, anyways, God bless him. Yes, and we will be working with his family, and we will be planting a tree somewhere for him, absolutely. So with all of those good words and with all of those good thoughts, in memory of everybody, meeting's adjourned. Oh, what did I say?